All right, thank you so much for staying with Daybreak. We're getting into our usual session where we talk about the issues that affect you. This morning, we're talking about what's on your plate. On a regular day, I'm not sure it would be like this. There'll be a bit of pages there, but
we have a better display from about
exactly.
8 o'clock.
We'll show you what we mean by that. But let me introduce our guest real quick. Starting from my immediate left, Dr. Triza Kinyari. Thank you so much for coming in. She's the chairperson, Public Health Society of Kenya. Asante sana for coming in. And Leila Lebatron. And got that right?
Got it right, Trevor.
Fantastic. Project lead of the Route to Food initiative, Asante sana. And Chef Ali Mandri, a man who needs no introduction, has always been here. Now he's on this side, then we'll go and eat later on. And also, last but not least, Dr. Florence Mutua. She's a scientist with ILRI, that is International Livestock Research Institute. Thank you so much for making time this morning. The conversation is about what's on your plate.
That's right. And of course, we want you to weigh in on this discussion, bearing in mind you probably have something on your plate right now. 22422 is our SMS line. The hashtag is Daybreak. Let me ask you this. What are your concerns about food in this country? Any concerns about vegetables, milk, meat, fruits as well? What are your thoughts on that? Let us know again. And you can use at Trevor Mbija, at Wahiga Mwaura,
at Zinzi K, at Willis Raburu, at Citizen TV Kenya,
at Chef Ali.
At Chef Ali.
He's already online right now.
Yes.
So let's take you immediately to page 10. Okay, so on the front page, okay, briefly, on the front page of the Daily Nation, a bit of politics there. Uhuru surprise wildcard, President's move divides Jubilee further, etc. But we want to take you straight to page 10 because a team has been set up to look into food safety in wake of an expose by NTV. Now, the government has formed a multi-agency committee to look into food safety following that expose. And Livestock PS Harry Kimutai yesterday said the committee of about 20 people from ministries and agencies involved in food production, safety, trade, enforcement of regulations, and the private sector will investigate the safety of all foods. And of course, there's talk of stringent mechanisms to root out unscrupulous food operators, etc., etc. But my guests are familiar with this. Before even this expose came out, they probably had their own concerns about the safety of food in this country. And Dr. Triza, let me start with you and get your thoughts on this. What do you think this task force should look at? What should be their priority, in your view?
I think their priority would be to ensure that all food is safe along the supply chain, because as a citizen, we basically want to make sure that whenever you go to a supermarket or a place where you want to buy food, you have a peace of mind. You can trust what you want to get. So at the end of the day, how reliable is the source? And how has this food been processed? Who has processed in terms of contamination? Or have you had safe practices in processing? And this is where you actually have to rely on who the vendor is, because depending on where the vendor gets the food, then the purchaser actually has no control over that. So what I'm really concerned is that we are busy citizens trying to live our daily lives. We want to have a peace of mind so that when you go to a supermarket or a shop, we basically know that whatever we are getting is safe. So I'm hoping that this task force will be able to achieve the tracking of any hazard, to do any kind of hazard analysis or critical control, which would actually be very important in ensuring that along the supply chain, we have safety.
Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about tracking later on, because that's one of the concerns, that we've been looking at in terms of our online data. But Leila, let me bring you in. What to you are the main threats to food safety in Kenya at this time? In Kenya, in East Africa, what are the main threats in your view?
I think, Wahiga, the main threat at the moment is the high use of pesticides with proven chronic health effects.
Chef Ali is vigorously nodding as you say that.
Yeah.
I don't know what he knows.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll complement each other then on what we say, but particularly those pesticide products that have active ingredients in them that are banned in Europe but available in the Kenyan market. These products, these active ingredients are things like permethrin, acephate, carbendazim. And Europe is our biggest where we get most of our pesticide products from. In terms of the pesticide properties database, these active ingredients are proven to be carcinogenic. They have an effect on our reproductive systems. They're neurotoxic, and they can cause disruptions to your endocrine system. So that regulates your hormones, so that triggers things like diabetes, thyroid problems. Carcinogenics obviously leads to cancer. And I think, interestingly, Kefis...
It sounds just getting worse and worse.
Yeah. I can go on. I mean, there'll be more time. So, yeah.
Those are some of your concerns.
Yeah.
Chef, from your experience, and you've done this for a long time, what do you think they should be focusing on, that team? And is it as bad as we make it sound as a country?
Well, I don't think it's as bad as we make it sound at the end of the day, because, you know, I work very closely with farmers, and you know, I know how they process whatever they do, like, you know, the ingredients, like how they farm, how they treat their livestock at the end of the day. So some parts probably yes, but not the entire country. That's what I would say, because I focus a lot on wholesome and organic and sustainable ingredients at the end of the day. And when you go to the farmers and these people who basically bring up this stuff, most of them do not actually use any preservatives or anything to basically bring up their livestock. So at the end of the day, most of them are very organic, and most of our ingredients are organic, but some have been introduced into what people are talking about right now, and it's getting a bit scary.
And what do you look out for? Because we say you're out there, you're going to shop as a chef. What do you look out for?
Wholesomeness. You know, you'll definitely see if something is, do you call it genetic?
GMO, genetically modified?
Yeah, you'll definitely tell is that at the end of the day, because, you know, we grow up seeing this thing. Exactly. It's like, if a tomato is going to be as big as, you know, like, oh my God, this is not normal, you'll definitely tell. And the normal tomato that we get it in our local market, when you go to Semekongoya, when you go to, you know, any local market, you see this is basically organic. This is what we've been eating since we were little. So you can tell. So when you look at, because I go to the market every single day, I go to the local market every single day, so I know what is good and I know what is basically.
So you look for abnormalities.
But not everybody knows what is good and what.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
Trevor might have no idea.
You might buy the bigger one. You'd be like, oh my God, this is big.
Exactly.
Yes.
So are there any? Okay, so let's talk maybe. Okay, apples, oranges, bananas. Give us some hints here. What do these look like to you?
Well, number one, I would easily say that the oranges are not Kenyan, so I'm not really sure about them.
And we'll be talking about that shortly. You know, products that come in from outside
That's the
the
thing.
country.
So we don't know how they were brought up, and I wouldn't vote for that. Bananas, at the end of the day, you know, we have a lot of bananas which, you know, at the end of the day, we'd do traditionally to bring them up, like, you know, smoke them to make them, like, you know, ripen, which is a traditional way. And, you know, and apples, most of the apples are probably not even from here as well. So it's a bit tricky.
It's a bit tricky. And you had something about bananas. I don't know, something you've been mentioning. Is it a rumor? Is it true?
It is true, actually.
What is it?
We'll find out from Chef in just a bit. So apparently bananas that have been assisted to ripen look fantastically yellow all through. They don't have the dark spots. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good banana.
This should be a good banana because it's.
Do you agree?
She agrees.
Sorry, we're coming to you. Do you agree with that?
I think this is a good banana in the sense that we don't have that evidence of rapid ripening, but more important, there's evidence that it's actually protective against cancer with long-term use, or that kind of banana. So I think it's something that's worthwhile to.
And this is primarily because of the spots.
Because of the spots.
If it was all yellow, you'd be suspicious.
So you'd rather eat the ones that have spots.
Yeah. Wow. I run away from them.
Let's bring in Dr. Florence with you on this. And you're a scientist. Now, where do we draw that balance? Because we are talking about high use of pesticides. Leila is saying that is a problem, but there are also people who are trying to ensure that their yields come out properly. Even these vaccinations that we have on livestock and all that, and then it ends up on your plate. How do we draw that balance between having the right product and also too much chemicals?
Yeah, I think it's... in addition to looking at the issue now, which is a concern, it's good to broaden and look at food safety along the entire value chain. Like, for example, at the farm level, we see meat, but we don't know what is in that meat. Farmers are using antibiotics, for example. We are not sure to what extent they are observing what we call the withdrawal period, the period between when you apply the medicine and the time when you are able to sell the product out for human consumption. Wow. So there are issues that need to be looked, in addition to what the committee wants to focus on.
Do you have any data as ILRI that you can refer to? I know ILRI has done studies over time. What are their thoughts on the state of livestock in the country?
Yeah, ILRI has done research for now on food safety, looking at even things like aflatoxins in the dairy value chain, toxins that come as a result of feeding animals feeds that are not of good quality, leading to release of aflatoxins, like one type of aflatoxin in milk, which end up to us as consumers.
Yeah.
So we've done a bit on that, among other issues.
Are there concerns? Should I become vegetarian?
Yes.
She's saying yes.
No.
Because of this? Because of concerns?
Interestingly,
2 years ago, that's when I became vegetarian, when in Kenya, just after, we were talking about this 2 years ago, do you remember, just after the cholera outbreak?
Yes.
There was the same stories about chemicals being injected into meat, and I was like, I'm going to become vegetarian.
Just because of the chemicals.
And
But
since
there's
now
also-
we're talking about it again. But
Yeah.
there's also chemicals and
In
pesticides and vegetables.
veggies, exactly. That's
Yes.
what I was about to say. And you, as the Root to Food initiative, you know, there's also this issue of having too much E. coli, salmonella, and it's an infection that's there. But it's almost impossible to achieve what she's saying, because that withdrawal period, you'd almost never know at what point was this animal vaccinated and at what point was it slaughtered. Yeah.
That's where awareness creation comes in, because the products that are used, the drugs themselves, they will always have a statement on how many days you need to keep before you sell the products out.
Yeah.
And then also, so it's sensitization at the farm level, but also those that are...
So how will the consumer know that this piece of meat that I've eaten, the whatever was injected in it was injected on this date, and then after that there was a period of X amount of time before that meat got to my plate? Is there a way that meat can come with a stamp of sorts that shows those things that you've mentioned? Is that something we should consider?
It's difficult to respond directly to what you are saying, because this is food safety is not a responsibility of one person. We need farmers to be responsible to observe the best practices at production level, but we also need to other players in the value chain to come in and also do their part.
Okay.
So it's not a one person's responsibility. But also, again, I think prioritizing food safety in the country, I think, goes along with the putting aside maybe resources that not only look at the issue now, but also come up with systems that would address food safety in the years to come, so that we will not always be responding.
Dr. Patrice, I want to bring you in and ask you this. Let's take this discussion down, because there are people watching this show from across the country. They're asking themselves, what your guests are saying is well and good, but food security, I don't even know what I'm going to eat next month before you guys talk about food safety.
Yeah.
So can a country honestly talk about food safety when food security is still a concern? Let's start there.
Actually, food security is still a problem. In fact, if you look at primary health care, one of the key elements is food security. So first you need to have enough food, which we can be able to think about storing before we start worrying about food safety. So we still have not been able to achieve, we have inequity in terms of food distribution, bumper harvests in one part of the country and starvation in other parts of the country, which is really not acceptable, because first of all, you need to come up with a way of redistributing and ensuring that we have enough food for everyone at the right time. Of course, that's an uphill task, but it's something that we should try and achieve. So once you achieve food security, then you worry about food storage. So if you don't have enough food, even food storage then becomes a problem. But without good food storage, then it means that whatever you store then is not fit for human consumption. So that already gives us a shortfall based on what we'll have lost during storage. Yeah, so we experience a lot of wastage because of storage.
Yeah, jump in.
Can I add to this? So I just want to comment that food security is not necessarily about the quantity of food. So food security means that we have access to, the right to food is we're free from hunger and we have access to adequate food. So the definition of food security is not just in terms of quantity available, but in terms of how safe that food is. It's a key pillar of what it means for a country to be food secure. So we cannot speak about worrying about food safety in the years or the months to come. It's a key, as part of the Big Four agenda and key pillars, we need to be talking about food safety now. It's no good to be eating fruits and vegetables full of pesticides, you know, and be like, oh, it's okay, I survived today, but, you know, my kids, and like, you know, in 5 years' time, I'm going to have cancer or, you know, be diabetic. And I want to just pick up on something that Chef Ali said as well. I don't know if I agree that the use of pesticides is not widespread. KEFIS did, under their National Pesticide Residue Monitoring Program, they, as the government regulator, they collected 1,139 food samples, okay, of which pesticides were detected in 46%, 10% of the samples collected, and that's not even that many samples, guys. 10% of the samples collected had exceedances of the maximum residue levels that are accepted by the EU. So I want to throw this at you. And the most pesticides were found in kales at 96%, peas, really high statistics, 75%, and capsicums. And I think what this tells us is that not only are farmers and operators directly affected by toxic pesticides, okay, because they're applying these, but consumers are indirectly affected. And to pick up on your discussion of how can we stamp meat and see later, that we can't tell, you know, we can't tell if a pesticide was put on your tomato the one day and the next day it's now harvested and sold in the domestic market. And Yani, all of those fruits and veggies that don't make it into the EU are just put back into our domestic market. So this is a really... So
the EU standards don't allow them to get exported, but then they're used locally.
Yeah. And I think as our Pesticides Control Product Board, we need to push back. We need to know, we need to look at what products we've registered, we need to look at the active ingredients in them, and we need to push back and say if it's not okay for another market because of these proven chronic health effects, we haven't even talked about their impact on the environment, it should be banned. Why is it okay for Kenyans?
So then what else is the alternative food production systems that we should be looking at?
We need to look at, Chef Ali said it, we need to look at organic food production systems. We need to look at agroecology, so food production systems that are looking at that are sustainable in the long term. We know we're facing effects.
Can I interrupt you? My concern is this.
Go for it.
The aspect of honesty. I'm sure some farmers know what you're saying, but it's probably expensive. Yes. Might take longer. We're in a country where everybody
is in a rush.
Everybody's in a rush. Everybody's in a rush, from athletes to politicians.
In a rush, but not in a rush.
So the aspect of honesty in food production, talk about that even as you talk about solutions.
I think we can see, I mean, the farmers know, you spot on. They'll give farmers products that are organically farmed will be used for home and others will be used for the market, okay? But we need to look at overall, it needs to be at the highest level. We need a narrative and a conversation that is coming down saying we as Kenya are at an agricultural crossroads. We are either looking at industrial large-scale farming, which is insert vis-a-vis GMOs, mass production of staple crops, or we're going to look at an agricultural system that takes cognizance of our operating context, which is primarily smallholder farmers who are producing the majority of our food, over 70% consistently, guys, since 2010. We have declining biodiversity and climate change. So we need to look at climate resilient farming systems like agroecology. And that are said to be more expensive, but are not, because they don't rely on expensive chemical pesticides, they don't rely on synthetic fertilizer inputs. We're using natural resources and a circular system for food production.
But isn't that where the problem is? I know we're engaging you for too long, because now climate resilience versus climate change and also GMOs, because farmers are thinking, because the climate is changing, I'm going to have to get other genetically modified seedlings so that I can fight this climate change.
There are other ways of being able to fight. In my view, the effects of GMOs are far greater reaching, and there are concerns around health, and they have far greater reaching effect on our soil quality and critical biodiversity.
Okay.
And so we need to look at alternative systems.
Okay.
And
Okay, I'll give you a chance to give us that.
Okay.
And of course, want to let our viewers know what's on your plate, and are you concerned about that? Text in. We've got a table of experts here. They have the answers to your questions. 22422 is the SMS line, and the hashtag is Daybreak as well. Chef, are you rethinking? Oh, we actually have 2 tweets. Okay, let's quickly put them up before a chef thinks about my question.
Then when we come back, I'd like Chef to also tell us, would he cook this meat?
First of all,
We'll find out. He'll tell us why.
Okay,
Let's see what they're saying online. Bring them up so that we see. Engineer Lazaro says department tasked with looking at our safety standards is ineffective. We've been consuming strange meat, GMO fruits from unknown sources. We're really surviving only on God's mercy.
I feel like he said that yesterday about something else. The economy. Okay, we have Barakibi. What? We export less chemical residue products and import high chemical residue products. Is that true? Dr. Mutua, is that true?
We export less chemical residue products and import high chemical residue products.
Does that make sense to you, Dr. Ari? Does that make sense to you?
For the exports?
Yes.
Yeah, there are indications. Just the way somebody said that what doesn't qualify to be exported is
It's used locally.
is channeled to.
And we don't ask questions about what comes into our market.
Yeah.
In fact, WHO actually advocates in their food safety. They have a food safety from the farm to the table approach that was...
Farm to fork.
Yeah, farm to fork approach. That was actually published in 2015. It talks about tracking forward and tracking back. It means that knowing what you're exporting and what you're importing. I don't have a lot of information on whether that is done in Kenya and how that is done, but this is something I was expecting that this task force should be able to
look
achieve.
At. Because
yes.
overseas in supermarkets, you find products with a label, farm to fork, which I guess should be an assurance that they've tracked this product from the farm and through all the processes as well, and they can vouch that it's met some sort of standard. I assume that's what you're talking about.
Yes. And even for us, based on what Dr. Mutua was saying, at what point do we start putting the food label, for example, on the meat? Because by the time it gets to the supermarket, it's probably packaged. So we need to agree at what point and how sure are we that whatever food label we put, like best before, is actually reliable.
And wasn't that the problem in that the NTV expose uncovered? The fact that the expiry dates, there was repackaging was happening. So
exactly.
As consumers, how can you ever know, really? Because it's just changing a label.
We have to take a quick break.
We need to take that
now,
break. I have to engage Chef on several questions. We engage him after the break.
Yeah, let's take that quick break. When we come back, also keep your views coming on 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya, at Trevor Mbija, at Wega Moura, at Zinzi K, at Chef Ali.
I'm not even hungry.
You're not even hungry anymore. Wega is becoming a vegetarian.
I'm on a water diet.
Drink water.
Yes.
Or on a seafood diet.
Yes.
You see food, you eat it.
We're making fish today. Okay.
That's another question.
Yes.
Go ahead. Let's take that break and we'll come back.
Okay. Welcome back. If you just joined us, I hope you had your breakfast, because this discussion might cause you to rethink what you're about to eat. We're talking about how safe is the food on your plate. We have some few samples here, of course, not representative about what Kenyans are eating at this time, but to help our guests visualize the challenges and opportunities within the food sector. And Chef Ali, I was coming to you at this time to get your reactions to what some of the other guests have said, but also talk to us about food storage. And the stories around buffets, especially in big hotels, in universities, etc., where there are constant rumors that food is repurposed from lunch to dinner and sometimes to lunch the next day. But maybe you start with reactions and get into that part of catering.
No, what I would say is that it really depends on the establishment. Depends on the establishment, like, how to basically store your food, because at the end of the day, when we go to school, a culinary school, we go through HACCP, which we just spoke about it this morning. This is the hazard critical control point.
Critical point,
and there is a system that we need to follow in terms of food safety and keep it safe. And if that is followed, at the end of the day, you'll be safe, and food will be safe for everyone. That is basically after cooking the food. But then now how you store it after cooking it is basically where the food gets contaminated. And speaking about the buffet right now, at the end of the day, like, I've worked with most of the hotels that I've worked for. Actually, the food, yes, does get contaminated when it's out at the buffet, because the buffet is open for almost 4 to 5 hours. So when it's out there and it's being reheated, and at the end of the day, you know, sometimes it's off, sometimes it's on. You know, the buffet, the shaving dishes has a little flame underneath, and you know, sometimes the flame is off, sometimes it's on at the end of the day. So it keeps on contaminating that food, and sometimes you'd go to a buffet and then you'd get home and you'd get a stomach, you know, problem at the end of the day, and then, you know, sick stomach, and then a lot of issues come out of that at the end of the day. And what really happens is that most of the hotels I've worked for, they actually do throw that food away, which is also another problem, because the thing is, it's like if you reuse that food, they say it's going to be contaminated. So the rule probably in the hotel industry will be like, you know what, let's get rid of this food. And the staff are not even allowed to eat this food, because they basically debate and say that it's contaminated. But again, looking at it again, we are looking into ending hunger by 2030. That's basically one of the global goals. And how are we achieving these goals if we keep on wasting food? But then it all starts from how you preserve your food. You know?
So you've never worked in a restaurant where the owner has said, "Chef, can we still use some of this for dinner?"
Well, I haven't. Most of the big hotels I worked for were basically getting rid of that food. And to me, it was a problem, because coming from Islamic background, it is basically haram to throw food, because people are suffering, people are hungry, people are dying for hunger. So you cannot see wastage. You say it's israf, you're throwing food. But again, when they say that the food is contaminated, it might be harmful. By the end of the day, you know, there are people who are hungry, and people will still go to the garbage and get that food. So it is a very debatable issue, and that's the reason I left the industry, because I was like, you know what, I cannot keep on seeing food being wasted and thrown into the dustbin, because the client has paid for the food, and the hotel is basically not going to get any loss at the end of the day, because the food is already paid for. They're going to throw it away, and the people hungry out there, and we need to end hunger by 2030. So it is a very tough issue.
It's a tough balance, a rock and a hard place. Would you cook this meat, chef?
Well, that is definitely contaminated. It doesn't look good to be cooked because you know, it's been exposed.
Now this is where the conversation is really, chef, because there's those who are saying that it needs to look, this looks almost natural. If it's too red, then it probably has sodium metabisulfite. So where do we draw the balance here?
Well, actually it's supposed to be a little bit pale. It's not supposed to be very red. And right now, as you can see, that is very dark. So it's a bit, you know, oh my God.
So this is not just dark.
And what about the smell? What about the smell?
Chef can
so
check.
so there's Dr. Muta, you can also jump in.
You can't literally smell anything here, because it doesn't smell bad.
Isn't that then a problem? Because also then the issue is, if sodium metabisulfite is used, then it has no smell.
That's the thing.
And it can last
longer.
So
it's actually working.
It's
working on that.
So that one is probably
You can also
contaminated.
tell us
cheap people.
a bit about the history of the meat.
We just bought it off a shelf
it
of a supermarket and
was
transferred it there.
When did you buy it?
Yes.
It was just bought from a shelf.
Yesterday, yesterday. Bought it yesterday.
And it still looks fresh.
It's even bloody, no?
Because proper mince, if I would buy proper mince from the butcher, literally, if I'm in Mombasa, that's where I come from, literally an hour outside the refrigerator, it would turn into a greenish color. You know? And that means it's not treated. And that means it's good for consumption. But then not at that stage, because when it starts to turn the color, this means, in Swahili we say it's going, in Haribika, it's going bad, you know? But this means it's also not treated. But if this has been out for at least 3 hours right now, and it's still red and still looking good, there's something in there.
Yeah, maybe the chef can also talk about, because you've talked about systems where it's big restaurants, but we know majority of us take food in small outlets,
kibandas,
where also no food would be left out. Maybe can you comment?
There's been an argument that it's even safer there, because there's a lot of movement, a lot of traction. People come.
Definitely yes, because you get the most freshest food ever when you go to the local Mama Ntilie. You know, the thing is, because they're gonna cook the spinach right there. They're just gonna buy it, wash it, and cook it there. At the end of the day, you'll definitely see it, and it's fresh, and it's actually moving all the time, because they keep on cooking, cooking, and you know, it's like the normal staple that we'll have there would probably be the sukuma, would probably be the ugali, and probably be like, you know, a little bit of karanga. You know, Kenyans love their meat at the end of the day, which right now this has caused a lot of drama right now. But then I would say eating at the local Mama Ntilie would be the best ideal right now because they cook the most freshest meals and amazing.
In fact, a study...
I just want to get one quick thought from her.
Yeah.
Do we need to start thinking about a national food safety authority in this country? Along the lines of what is there in America?
Yes, I think we should, so that at least we have a system that captures any maybe issues in the different steps in the value chain. Instead of having these reactions, rather being more reactive.
The media does a story, everybody reacts, and then
because if the WHO published a report, I think some years back, and showed how much burden it showed that the burden of foodborne infections is comparable to even the burden of diseases that we know, like malaria, etc.
Wow, it's comparable.
Yeah, it's comparable.
Okay.
So that shows that we need really to prioritize food safety.
Because they're the ones that we'd call if we have a problem. Because right now, if I see food somewhere, I'm not quite sure. I don't know who to call. Who do you reach out to?
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
well, there are regulatory bodies. I mean, KEFIS is responsible for doing testing, certainly in our local market. KEBS is responsible for food that we find in our supermarkets. So it's not like, I believe that there are already good systems in place. I think what's lacking is they can certainly always be improved, but also what's lacking is regular monitoring and really hearing that people are concerned.
But there's also a
and worried
counter-argument to
about
that
this.
because many people say, in fact, that's the reason I see here in 2018 the government was actually thinking of establishing a national food safety authority as we speak. That
How
was
long
last
ago was
year.
that?
It hasn't happened yet because they were saying there's so many regulatory bodies, but they're not connected, and that's why they're inefficient. So when we have just one body where we know this is the guys, where once we have that stamp, then we are good.
if you
That's
need
what
any
we're looking
data,
for.
then that's
And
a
then
body
we also
manage.
have the law, the Food, Drug and Chemical Substances Law. It's CAP 254, and it basically looks at deception. For example, making that criminal, where you basically should not sell anything that you label as deceptive, and also in terms of being able to prove that something is contaminated. So at the end of the day, you find that most of those sections on that particular law are really there on paper. We are not sure how well they are enforced, and this is one thing the authority would be able to do.
From the Public Health of Society Kenya as the chairperson, what kinds of complaints do you get from the people? Do you get complaints? What are they saying out there? Is this situation as bad as we make it seem?
For us at the Public Health Society, we are really public health specialists. So we work in diverse backgrounds. Some of us serve in government, others serve in international NGOs and the private sector. So basically, we are not the first on call in terms of complaints. So we normally look at different reports that are in the media and in publications. So we are really not on the call to the citizens. But from what we've seen is that at the end of the day, what we really need to know is what are the safe levels. For example, like sodium metabisulfite, what are the daily acceptable levels? And having one study like what we had recently, looking at a few supermarkets, being able to sample to confirm that the levels were high, maybe have been a good thing, but we need a representative sample, a nationwide kind of study being done even in the counties, because now we have a lot of urbanization in the counties, and it will be good to find out what is going on there. So we actually are in need of doing a survey as a society to be able to come up with that kind of data at county level.
So then it means at this particular point there's even no recourse for Kenyans in case you're thinking I took some contaminated food. You can't even tell where you got it from, and you can't even get any sort of recourse legally.
And especially bearing in mind we're in a country now that's really importing a lot of food. Recently one of the papers did some sort of investigation about food coming in from Uganda, from Tanzania. Who checks that food and who certifies it before it gets onto our plates?
Actually, we don't have a clear way of checking that, because that's one of the things the authority should be able to do.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Are we all going to die?
We've all kept quiet. So someone's texting us. Are we all going to die?
No, I think.
But part of saying we are all going to die.
It was a comment from a viewer.
You will find contaminants in food. But the question is, do those contaminants lead to disease in humans? That's where risk assessment comes in. You look at the contaminant being there, its likelihood of causing the disease, and the consequences of the outcome.
Because Kenya is signatory to, there's a international code of conduct on pesticide management. So it was published by WHO and FAO. And this is a really good document that Kenya is signatory to as part of the Stockholm and Rotterdam Conventions. And it basically sets out steps to identify the products or substances, chemical substances in the market, to assess the risks, so to do a risk assessment, and then to determine your mitigation strategies. Because for some of them, they might be close to very restricted use, some might be outright banned, some products or active ingredients. And I think as Kenya, that is something we really need to do. There is sort of a hit list of active ingredients that would be first priorities, especially those guys that have multiple chronic health effects, so more than one. Those that spend a long time, environmental persistence, so spend a long time in the environment. You know, there's a way about categorizing and relating which are the most toxic, and then I think we need to go about, we need to identify what they are, and we need to go about assessing, do we really need these? Is it worth the risk? And if not, we need to take mitigation steps. All right, let's bring up what you're saying on social media. The SMS line is 22422. You can tweet at Citizen TV Kenya, Trevor Mbija, Twega Moura, at Zinzi K, at Willis Raburu, at Chef Alimandri. Did I get that right? Fantastic. Let's see. Mtua Peter. He says ecological farming is the only reliable way to carry out agriculture. It doesn't contaminate food products compared to non-organic farming, which is the main cause of cancer. Also, use of pesticides lowers biodiversity, hence lowering soil fertility, and the farmers start wondering what's happening to their farms, and this calls for awareness creation. Ecological farming, he says.
Sounds like a very scientific view. Okay, we'll give you a chance. But note that at EJ Nyamongo. Unfortunately, we have a government that waits until something happens to look for a solution, as opposed to availing preventive measures that will ensure the safety of all Kenyans. Yeah, let's see another one. Policy and governance. And that's Wanaina. Says, I worked in a milk processing factory X as a factory microbiologist. It's common practice in milk factories to illegally add sodium hydroxide during processing because it extends the shelf life of the milk. No food is safe unless you're growing it yourself. No. I'm not. Okay, Kiberu Jimmy says, we need to change our attitude towards GM foods. They've been grown and eaten safely for close to 3 decades. GMO crops have been certified as safe to eat by all global food safety agencies. They rely less on pesticide use. No, let's start from what Kibiru Jimmy is saying. Do you agree, Leila? No. Because that's just bring up that tweet one more time, because he's advocating for GMO and have that come up, and he's advocating for GMOs. That's what he's saying. That's not the one. It's the last one. The last one. Kibiru Jimmy. Yes. Change our attitude towards GMO foods. They have been grown and eaten safely for close to 3 decades now. GMO crops have been certified as safe to eat by all global food safety agencies. They rely less on pesticides used. Yeah, so I mean, it's contested, the use of GMOs. So we can't, these blanket statements that are like all the global health agencies agree that that the GMOs don't have health effects is not correct. And I think also in terms of, we're not just looking at the application of pesticides, guys. We're looking at a seed that's been modified in a laboratory. In its basic structure. And we don't know, we do know, I mean, there is science to show like what effects that might have on our soils, on our natural biodiversity. There's also a big issue in Kenya around economic dependence, I mean, and patenting of seeds. You know, these products are going to be not developed in Kenya, they're developed in Europe or the US, and then now you're telling me every year farmers who are mostly poor are now going to have to buy patented seeds every year, and in order for them to function well enough, they need certain inputs, certain fertilizers, certain pesticides, and that's not a sustainable form of agriculture. It encourages monocropping, you know, big fields of like maize and wheat, and we need to be looking at small integrated farming systems. Teresa, do you have a position on this, GMO, as the Public Health Society of Kenya? And give us your definition of GMO, because different people have different thoughts about what GMO actually is.
It's basically what she's talked about. And really, as a society, we really rely on evidence, the evidence that's available. And of course, we know that it's still not the appropriate thing to use because we have options locally in terms of food production.
So you're not satisfied yet that we should use it?
We've not lost all options. I think we still have, if we can boost our organic farming and be able to ensure food safety, I think we shouldn't really go the GMO way.
That should be the last resort.
That should be the last resort.
Okay.
Yeah. I really had a comment on the non-organic, the comment on the ecological farming.
Yeah.
And we should be very cautious when you talk about a cause, like non-organic farming causing cancer, because it means we have nothing to use. Yes, it's a blanket statement because it's really about the risk. It increases the risk. Cancer has many causes. Can be stress, can be lack of physical activity, and then we need to think about what options we have. If we engage in a lot of physical activity, we eat a lot of antioxidants, then we have a better option. Because if we say we are all going to die, then it means we don't have an option. Yeah. So we need to do a prospective study. A prospective study means that we follow a group of people over a period of maybe 25 years, look at their risk factors, maybe even picking the metal bisulfate, all the contaminants along the way, then we can comfortably say that there's been a cause.
Okay. So to the viewer who was very worried
whether we're going to die,
relax.
No.
And we'll also like to talk about the old milk issue.
Okay,
how you extend the shelf life. Because when you're at home and you milk your cow directly, you know 3 days without refrigeration, the milk is done.
bad.
So how then do we manage having milk
when
that
you
has
hear
shelf
long life milk
for like a month or two?
But that's what we use. Oh my God.
And that's a lot of what we use now. We'll come back to Chef.
So let's get a reaction after the break, and maybe we take the SMSs after the break as well. Or we take them now.
We can take them now.
We can take them now.
So that when you come back, we also respond to them, bring them up on the screen. Komen Eldoret says the amount of vegetables grown near sewers seems to be increasing. This scares many. In other places, meat from dying animals is very common. Furthermore, public health officers don't inspect such meat. Remember, even with a slow economy, the food industry keeps looking north and thus attracting many investors. We'll talk about this issue of growing fruits and veggies around
There was a time an investigation was done on the same in Nairobi.
Is a main concern.
All right. Tom from Gara, Daybreak, the challenge is to strike a healthy balance between market management and sustainable farm practices. Cuba has achieved this balance. Okay.
All right. Nixon Dujire from Kindaruma says innovators should be busy trying to come up with a small, affordable domestic machine for testing food poisons. Akini kubaya.
So we need to look at milk, we need to look at sewage and its effects on food, and that Cuba example.
The scientists haven't told us what they think from the GMO angle. Florence Mutua will tell us what their research shows on that and what she thinks as well. Yeah. So we'll be back in just a bit. Stay with Daybreak. Keep the views coming. 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya, at Trevor Mbija, at Wega Moura, at Zinzi K, at Chef Ali Mandri. We'll sample some of your views. Use the hashtag Daybreak.